Hi again, welcome back to Kick Punched. This is the second video in our Casey Neistat likeness series. So first things first, just make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and we'll jump right in. So this is where we ended off. His face needs a lot of work, so we're gonna alt-tab over to our concept and take a look. So, you know, we want to get this his nose in a better place, his nostril, his chin shape. Overall, the shape of his face, we're going to refine that. His ears, the ridges around his ears, just stylize everything a good amount. And then, once we wrap that up, we're going to start moving into this dynamic pose. And then after the pose, we can then start to extract his clothing and go from there. So, let's dive back into Zbrush. We started here. We'll start with the nose. Oops, turn on my snake hook brush, and it's always going to warn you if you want to use Sculptors Pro with this, which is super annoying. I wish that they would do away with this error. I can't stand it. We're going to skip that for now. We're going to increase his nostril size and just kind of bring those out just to match more in line with his actual nose. And make it a little bit less pointy, just a smidge less pointy. There we go. Using the Decimate standard, going to carve this crease in just a little bit. So what I'm trying to get over here is, let's see, so that he's got a much larger, rounder nostril area. So just trying to get that. And then my concept, I was liking where the chin was going. So chin has this kind of, it's a little bit wider, and there's a line that goes across the top, and then the creases of his mouth, folds and stuff can kind of come down a little bit more. So I'm gonna try to get that too. And then using snake hook. Using H polish, going up. I'm going to subdivide one more time by hitting Control D. And try to just get that nice sharp line at the top of his chin there. Going back to the Decimate standard, going to add a little bit of a crease right here underneath his lip. And then pull that one out just a little bit. His upper lip is like barely there at all, so we'll just keep that. But still add some creasing to it. And then this line here, I think he has this line that kind of comes down right there like that. So yeah, I think that's looking a little bit better. These are all details that will show up in the print now. Okay, and his eyes, we're not going to concern ourselves with eyes very much because you're going to be hidden behind his sunglasses. And again, not sure if I covered this, but if you want to reset your pivot, you can just unlock and then click this little reset orientation button and then relock, and then it'll reset your pivot. Kind of freeze the transforms, if you will. So just using a mix of H polish, Decimate standard, and snake hook brush fairly consistently. And just, if you're not sculpting on your mesh and you're clicking and nothing's happening, just remember that you're probably on the wrong subtool. So just Alt left click on that to make sure that you are on the active subtool. Do that all the time. Even after all my years of modeling, still. Use a snake hook and just try to increase the thickness of that ridge. H polish. Some of this topology is kicking my butt right now. Squashing his face down just a little bit more, trying to get that likeness. Oops. Too strong, too strong. There we go. Okay, tab, look at our reference. I don't want to push the proportions until when you start to giggle is about when you're going for like a caricature or like a stylized character. You want to get to the point where you're kind of giggling, you know? You don't want to be like, ugh. You want to be like, ugh, you know? There we go, we're getting there, I think. Okay, I think from there we're gonna just hold, he's looking maybe a little too old man-ish. So let's smooth some of those wrinkles out just a little bit. Youth, give him some youth. There we go, maybe. I really like that. I like that one little slash though. Oh well, okay. So that's good for the time being. Let's get him posed up. We'll start by stylizing his hands just a little bit, and then we'll get him posed up. Let's go that route. So add some width to this thumb. Sort of square up the tips of the fingers. Give him some knuckles. In fact, instead of doing this, let's come over here to our inflate brush and just kind of inflate these fingers out. Give some thickness. Okay, and then stepping down subdivision, and just shift smoothing the tops of the fingernails, kind of flatten those out a little bit more. And then gonna pull out these corners of the fingers and just square those up. Go up a subdivision level and start pulling out the knuckles. Okay. Those are looking a little bit better. This awkward bend in the wrist. I'm gonna come over here and hold control, switch over to my mask lasso, and then I'm just gonna lasso the hand area. And just always double check that your symmetry is on while you're doing this work, because that's gonna save you a monster headache down the road of having to resymmetrize things. So I didn't even explain what I'm doing. So I have it masked out, and what I've done here is I've gone to rotate, and then you have a choice between using the new transform gizmo or they've left in the legacy transform gizmo. So if you click that, that button again and turn that button off, it'll switch to this little, like if you click and drag on your mesh, you can drag out these little lines everywhere. And you can see that as like a joint or like a rig, like a bone that you can use to control wherever you're at, right? So in this case, I've masked the hand area. And then if I click and drag right there in the wrist over to the fingertip, it sort of snaps this joint into place. And if you rotate around, you want to kind of try to center this joint in the pivot, in the pivot of his wrist so that it rotates to the right area. And then if you mouse over, you can mouse over either the orange circle or the inner circle, which turns red, and that's the active control point. And so if you click on that, you can rotate your character. And you can use the traditional transform to do this too. I just find that I get better results, have a little bit more control using the traditional one. So this is a way of posing your characters using these fancy little joints here. This wrist area is real skinny and wonky looking, so we're going to thicken that up a little bit. And the proportions are getting a little wonky. Shift D to go down. We're working with less polygons, I should say. So I'm going to remask this hand with the lasso and actually invert my selection, blur that mask, and I'm going to scale up the hand size just a little. Whoops. And that's one thing you'll find out is that the pivots always scale from center. And so you're gonna battle this, but it's just something you have to deal with at the moment until ZBrush figures out how to make it so it scales out from the actual pivot of the transform. It's just a bug that they've got going on. Okay, cool. All right, so let's just start posing this guy. And if I switch over to my concept, let's take a look at our pose. So we can start by posing posing the legs. Let's start by posing those legs. Switching down to our lowest subdivision level by hitting Shift D and then Control, drawing a lasso around those legs. Control left clicking, blurring, and then switching over to our old school transform gizmo. Click and drag that point right there in the pelvis area. Scoot it back into place. And this time we want to pivot the feet outwards. So what we're going to do, instead of grabbing this little dot in the middle down here, we're going to grab this dot in the middle right here and then click and rotate. And we'll start to rotate those feet outwards a little bit. Spread those apart. We're in a pretty good pose as is for now. The other thing we want to do is we're gonna lose our symmetry. But that's fine for now. So we're going to turn off our symmetry by hitting X, and then we're going to Control click lasso that arm and blur our mask. Make sure that that's the lighter area is in the arm, because right now what we're trying to achieve is this. We're going to have his arm come down and then into his pant pocket here. So what I've done is I've dragged that pivot out to the wrist, and I'm just grabbing that inner circle of the outer circle there and just rotating that hand to try and fake like it's going to be in his pocket. And so you can rotate too, like using this inner circle right here, the middle circle. And if you switch over to the move brush, you can do some interesting things too. Like it'll especially if you're clicking on this guy, this outer guy, it'll just do some weird, it'll deform in a different way, like kind of squash it, so you don't have to do that manually. You can just do some, you can play around with that. Sometimes it does good things, sometimes it doesn't. And fix this. You're always gonna have to go back and kind of clean up some stuff. It's just the way it goes with the deformation of the rig. It's gonna move that pectoralis muscle in a little bit and just kind of. Going to get a little weird, a little squirrely, so just be aware of that. And yeah, okay, so I'll tab over. His elbow is bent. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is lasso around the lower arm, and then control holding out while you're dragging, and then holding alt will do the invert of that mask. So it'll do a white mask to get rid of that stuff that we don't want. So again, that was control, hold alt, it'll switch to white, and then you can do the inverse of the mask. Invert the mask, control left click outside of your geo, redraw our joint structure here, and then kind of like bring his hand in. We're not gonna have to actually fit this in the pocket. It's okay to have it just kind of intersect or penetrate with the leg geo for now. So we just want to make this arm out here look natural. Cool. And now something to take note of is because we moved his body out of symmetry, meaning this arm is doing something different than this arm. If we turn on X, you can see the dots way out there in space. But one fancy thing the Zbrush has allowed us to do, if you come over here to transform and go over here down to activate symmetry, X, you can click this button called use posable symmetry, and then it'll fix your issue. So now we still have symmetrical modeling on, and the only reason this functions is because we have a clean symmetrical topology underneath all this. If we didn't have a clean topology, like if we were in Dynamesh mode right now, there's no way this would work. That's why we want to work with the clean topology for the body of the character as much as we possibly can before we switch over to Dynamesh. So now, what I think I'm going to do is introduce you to Transpose Master. And so what this is going to do, if we come over here to Z plugin, scroll down to Transpose Master and hit T-Pose Mesh. This is taking all the subtools, combining them into one subtool. So now if I look at the subtool, you can see we don't have all the separate subtools like we did over there. But if I come back over here and click on this guy, this is our old subtool. This is our master subtool. And then Transpose has created a temporary subtool where they're all combined. And this just makes it easier to pose and do things that we need to do for now. So just remember, symmetrical modeling is not going to work in this process, but I'm going to show you it's a way of easily transferring your pose work back to your original subtool. So what we're going to do now is pose the arm. So with the mask lasso brush, we're going to control click around the arm, blur our mask, redraw the joint structure. So if we look at our concept, this is going to be an awkward pose. It's going to take a lot of work to get in the right shape. He's holding his arm straight up and kind of rotating, so it's going to be a tricky, kind of extreme pose to hit. So be patient with yourself. Sometimes you just have to redraw those joints to get what you need. Oops. And then make sure that you're in the right transform. Right now I need to rotate. So now his bicep should be pointing up. And I think that's probably good for now. We got some weird stuff going on, so I'm just smoothing this part out. Raising his shoulder up. So I can get that selfie. The other thing too I think I'm going to do is I'm going to transpose his entire torso. So I'm going to come over here and draw a line around his whole torso. I'm going to blur that really well and then invert that and then redraw our spine joint. Move it to the center and then kind of lean it this way. So he's kind of like leaning, maybe leaning back a little bit. Now let's get his head looking the right direction. So we're going to draw around the neck and then blur our mask. Invert a selection. Move that pivot into the right place and then rotate his head like so. He's kind of coming back. And let's continue to look back at our concept, see how he's looking. So let's turn it a little bit more, maybe lean it forward this way. So it looks like our mask blurred too much. We don't want to deform the jaw. So we're going to come back here and reconnect that. And then blur our mask and then try again. So we want his jaw to maintain his shape. There we go. Using the snake hook to get things back into place. He might be in just a little bit too heroic of a pose, so I'm gonna add a little bit of a slouch to his posture. And then this one leg here is just like, it's a little bit more like cocked in like this direction. And this one kind of comes out this way. I like that, so I'm gonna try to get that going too. So, one thing you can do that's real fancy, if you have the transpose tool on, if you control left click down and your topology is clean, sometimes your mask can follow that topology and give you that influence that you need to be able to move that around properly. It only works if your topology is clean, like consistently. Sometimes you can get Dynamesh to work that way too, or I guess I haven't really explained Dynamesh a whole lot, so that might be foreign to you, but just remember you can control left click and drag down the direction of the topology and get those weights to be painted kind of automatically instead of having to draw a lasso. Posing the foot now, and repose our joint here, and then try a little rotation. There we go. Cool. All right, so just straighten his arm out. It's too much of a bend in it. Our anatomy is kind of getting out of control here. I want his biceps to be a little bit skinnier. His arms are getting squashed and stubby, so we got to give some length to his arms. Now I'm going to scale up my snake hook draw size and kind of pull out his forearm length a little. And use the inflate brush and inflate out the forearm just a little bit here. Okay, so switching between perspective and orthographic views just to see how things are looking. Let's alt-tab back to our concept and see where things are off. So I think right now, like, obviously his head size overall is still pretty off. His head needs to go like bigger. And then his torso, I think, needs to go wider. So I think those are the proportions that are off right now, and his arm might his arms might need to be a little bit longer too. So try to get that going. So I'm going to use move topological for the torso adjustments. And at this point, I'm still going to turn on symmetry just for kicks and see if it works. And it looks like it's working okay. So we haven't moved the torso a ton, so that's working okay. Turning off symmetry now, fixing the neck area. And a little less of a belly. He's a pretty fit dude, so he's not going to have a belly. And then his head overall needs to go bigger. So dragging a mask lasso. And then adjusting my pivot. Oops. So that's what happens if you have that locked and then reset, it'll move your geo. So you got to make sure you unlock, reset, and then relock, and then you're good to go. Let's turn it back towards camera just a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to extend the length of his arm, draw a mask around that, and then I'm just going to use the move brush and just kind of pull that out just a little. And then mask his bicep area, so we're scaling more of his forearm now. Unmask and just kind of stretch stuff around where we need it. Okay, you're gonna bring his knees back here. Using the move topological brush, gonna bring his forearm length out. And then I'm gonna run an inflate too on his arms in general here. There's some more forearm. If you hold Alt, it'll deflate, which is kind of cool too. Okay. So I think we're getting closer to our concept art. I mean, his, let's see, his calves could probably go in just a little. You know, we get the pants on there. We're gonna bulk out still from there, so let's just give me these little chicken legs for now. Let's see what those look like after we pants him. Okay. Alright, cool. So, let's work on that chest definition just a little. It's not gonna matter. We need to get clothes. So, okay, so there's our naked Neistat character for now. Let's pass him back to our ZTL. If you come back here to Z plugin and then go over to T-pose subtool, it'll pass everything back and adjust. It'll adjust all of our subtools, but maintain those separately. So it's a pretty rad tool. So like we still have our high res detail. If we hit D and go up here, you might have to go through and clean up some of the weird streaking or whatever that's happened when we ran that deformation. But as far as now, he's posed and I think he's getting fairly close, so we can start kind of extracting his clothing. Okay, so we're back in our original subtool. I think from here, let's start with getting this guy some pants. How about that? So we hit Shift D and come down here. And it looks like, we still have our clean topology, so we can start with this. Let's do that. So if I hit duplicate over here under subtool, we're going to duplicate that body geo. And I'm going to come over here to geometry and hit delete higher. I don't need any of the higher subdivision levels for stealing his pants. So in order to get just his pants area, I'm going to control shift left click on these points here. So now he's got undies, that's darling. If I control shift left click outside of the geo, it'll invert that. And then I can continue to control shift left click on the verts of these polygroups that I like, that I want to include in the pants. And that's good for now. So now if I control shift left click and drag it outside of that, it'll invert my selection. And now I have some pants. But the other stuff is still there. We want to get rid of that. So I'm going to come over here to modify topology and go to delete hidden. And now you're thinking, well, those are great shrink wrapped pants. They're like right there on top of the skin. We don't want that. We want them to be sort of inflated out a little bit. And so what I'm going to do there is I'm going to hit Control W on my keyboard, and it's going to change all of our polygroups to one polygroup. Hallelujah. And what we're going to do now is come over here to the brushes and this really powerful brush called Z Modeler. And what this does is it adds a polygonal workflow inside ZBrush, which is super awesome. So, and the way to use that is you'll notice if I mouse over a vert, I get these different options. If I mouse over a face, it says Q mesh a polygon, move points, edges, insert an edge loop. So if I were to do that, I can add an edge loop right there. And let me turn on solo mode so you can see a little bit better. So again, mouse over the edge, you can add an edge loop. Mouse over that face, and you can extrude a face like so. Or mouse over the vert, and right now it's just set to move. And if I want to adjust these parameters, what I can do is, as I'm mousing over that face or that polygon, I can hit spacebar, and it opens up the world to you essentially. So I can perform all these operations on all of these different targets. Okay, so let's say I want to just extrude those pants and give them some thickness. I'm going to hit extrude, and then I want to extrude not just a single polygon, but I want to extrude the whole polygroup, right? So now if I do that, it's going to add thickness to all of that, which is exactly what we want. So now he's got, some actual pants. And what we want to do now too is add these little cuffs. If we go back to my concept here, we've added these little cuffs. And so we want to achieve that too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mouse over this edge loop right here and hit spacebar. And then instead of insert, we want the operation to be polygroup. And it's going to polygroup that loop. So if I click on that loop, or this edge right here, you can see it went around that loop. Okay. And we didn't have symmetrical modeling on, so we gotta make sure, well, he's out of pose, so we'll just do it on both sides. So select that loop, select this loop, select this loop, and select that loop. And then we still have extrude as our face operation, so we can still use that. So now we can extrude out that guy. But say we want this to crease properly. We don't like that when we hit Control D to subdivide, it adds this kind of a feel. So we want this to maintain. So what we can do now is come in here and mouse over that edge and hit spacebar. Come up here to insert a single edge loop. And you can do multiple edge loops, which is cool too. And if you click and drag on that, it'll insert multiple edge loops averaged throughout the size of that edge. But what we want to do is we want to just slide an edge loop in there. So we're going to do a single edge loop and then click and drag on that edge and drag it all the way down. And then just make that our crease. So I'm going to crease these edges because I want them to kind of maintain when I subdivide. Okay. And then we're going to do this side over here. Okay. And where else could we use? We could probably use creases up here along the band of the waist. And maybe we want to scale this in a little bit too. So let's do a scale, and you can do the edge, which is or edge loop complete. So if you're grabbing this whole edge, it's going to scale that whole edge in, which isn't bad. Or you could do the poly loop itself, and you could scale that whole edge loop in too, which works. And then we're going to crease this little edge again by adding more poly loops in there. So I mean, I don't think this is as much control as, say, if you were to do this in Maya or Blender or wherever, but it does afford you an option to be able to stay inside ZBrush a little bit more, whereas before we had this, there's a lot of back and forth. So anyway, so now what happens? Goodness, sometimes the zoom does not work, especially with the stylus. Hit F on your keyboard to frame something up like that, or you can click on this little button over here and just click frame up. So, okay, so we got the pants. I don't like how it's kind of popping out right there. I'm gonna hit Shift F to turn off my poly frame and then turn off solo mode so we can see how those pants are looking. And they're looking pretty sweet. Let's add a little bit of stretch in those. And I think we'll add these pockets in the Dynamesh phase as opposed to modeling those cleanly like in the topology. We'll just, it's one of the benefits of modeling for toys or for printing is you don't have to be super clean. You can get a little bit ugly with what you're doing with your topology, and it's one of the benefits, so that's why I like doing it. Okay, so Just remember when you did a mesh extract that you made a separate subtool. So the body's now in its own subtool. So if those legs start to kind of peek through again, you're gonna have to push those back in. Switching back to the pants, hitting Control D, and I'm gonna use the Damien standard now and sort of carve in some wrinkle detail. Holding Alt, I'm gonna come over here and pull out where these kind of pants are stretching. And because they're suit pants, he's gonna have like, you know, he's gonna have them nicely pressed. He's gonna have these nice little seams right here that come up the front of the legs. And now I think that still we need to get a little more stylized with this stuff. It's still kind of in between realistic and stylized, so we need to make sure that we're directing people to that the proper feel. Just getting kind of sidetracked with wrinkles. I love doing clothing wrinkles. It's like very therapeutic. So look at reference to, you know, pull up pants, you know, on the Google or whatever, and you can kind of get references to how things wrinkle, especially with slacks or pants like these. There's going to be different types of wrinkles than, say, you know, like Wranglers or jeans or whatever. So just Control D to get me some more resolution in there. Just popping these pockets out a little bit. And then oops. Okay, switching back to the body. We can now, actually going back to the pants, let's try to get this hand in his pants. How about that? Let's get that hand in those pants. You have to bunch or pull out this pocket quite a bit, and it doesn't really matter under the hood what that hand's doing. We can Alt left click over to the body and kind of push that hand in. It's gonna look weird, but once you get it in there, hopefully it'll. Okay. Cool. And P. And another thing you can do to adjust your camera settings that I like to do is you come over here to the drop down, and come over here and like change your focal distance to like 24. It'll give them a little bit more perspective. So now if we come over here and hit P, you'll see a much different, like more drastic change in your focal distance. So back on the body, kind of fix some of this anatomy. Like I said, I'm not getting too caught up in the anatomy just because it's all going to be under clothing. Which reminds me, let's get this guy a suit coat now. Or maybe let's start with the shirt, I guess. And now if we turn off everything, turn on solo mode, you can see we got some weird stuff going on here. Turning off symmetry. I'm gonna fix this just because I'm getting sidetracked again. Now let's turn on our symmetry and make sure that use posable symmetry is on. And each time you step up a subdivision level, you need to make sure that you've done that, okay? But you can see now that we've got that. I'm going to go to Mask Lasso and just kind of draw out where I think the shirt would be. It's a long sleeve shirt. And I'm going to turn off my symmetry because it's being weird. Remember to hold Alt to do the inverse of that mask. And then I'm just going to come down this wrist here. Mask that guy too. Okay, cool. Alright, so we remember what we do. We come over here to extract and do a extract. Let's see if that'll actually work. And it did, so we're gonna hit accept and accept that new mask. Now, it made it a little bit too thick. So what I'm going to do is come back up here and delete this extract. Come back to my original subtool, which is still masked. I'm going to go back to the extract options and drop my 0.02 to like a, we'll do a 0.09 and hit extract. See what that does for me. And I think that's looking a little bit better. Okay. So now we've got that shirt in there. Oops. Sometimes your draw size gets stuck. That has been the case since way back in the Zbrush. 4R2 days. 3.1 days back. Okay. So cool. He's got a shirt. He's not nude anymore. Using move topological, just get the shirt back into place. Kind of underneath. Tuck that guy in. Tuck your shirt in. Your mom ever tell you that stuff when you were going to church? Tuck your shirt in. And using the Decimate standard, I'm going to hold Alt and just like pull this out so it's kind of, you know, bunching out over the top of those pants just a little bit. And again, this is going to be covered in a suit coat, so we don't need to push this too far. Oops. Navigation in Zbrush can get squirrely. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's something that just gets a little bit weird sometimes. So, just gonna add some wrinkles here. I will use this. You know what I might actually end up doing is just extracting the suit coat from the shirt anyway. So if we do add detail here, it'll come forward in the extraction of the suit coat. So I'm not losing any work. Yeah. Cool. It's a fairly complex thing to make, a suit in 3D. It's kind of an ambitious tutorial, I'm not gonna lie. Hang in there though. Whoops, there's an armpit. Using the Decimate standard, continue to sort of run these stretchy details across the shirt. Oh, his eyes look so dead. Poor guy. Try to pose those. Whoa! Yeah, that's not gonna work. Let's go ahead and extract some glasses out of this guy's forehead. How about that? Does that sound weird or what? Okay, so we want the roundness of his forehead so that we can have that in the shape of the glasses. So we'll just do an extract. We'll just start painting our mask here. Turn on solo mode and just start drawing out the shape of the sunglasses. His sunglasses are very distinctly his. He's always wearing them, so we want to make sure we get these just right. Let's find a good reference point. This one right here is perfect. This is the shape we're trying to go for. And you're thinking to yourself, why are you drawing the sunglasses on this guy's forehead? Just a starting point, you know? Why not? Okay, so let's do an extract. Let's turn this back to like 0.02-ish. Get it there. And hit extract and see what it does. Too thick. Scaling it down to 0.054-ish. 0.00. Do an extract. That's perfect. Hit accept. Alright, cool. So now we have glasses in a separate subtool. Let's get those down and into place. The problem is what it likes to do is it masks some of it for you already automatically. We want to clear the mask. So we can clear that, get our transpose tool in place. Whoops, what just happened? Okay, and then sometimes you have to redraw that if you're switching between like the legacy. Turn off your symmetry mode, make sure that is off, because we are out of symmetry mode, and ideally we should have done these while in symmetry mode. I messed it up, hold on a sec here. Turning off symmetry angrily. And you'll notice we had a bunch of his shirt area still masked too, so what we have to do is get rid of all this shirt area. And I'm just going to control, shift, left click, and drag over the glasses. I'm going to come over here to geometry and go to delete hidden, and now it's just his glasses in there. So now we have just these guys. Redraw your transpose tool, and let's get those glasses in place over his face here, over his eyes. And like you said, like they're going to be a little bit deformed because we drew them off the forehead, so we're going to have to do some finagling to get those into place, get those working just right, and smoothing those a little bit. Maybe scale the size up drastically, and get him there. This one's a little ambitious. There's a lot of detail work that goes into this particular concept. I wanted to try to make these videos shorter and not longer, but this one just isn't going to happen. I don't think it's going to be several videos. Just fair warning. But let's do a re-dynamesh on them. Turn up the resolution to 8 something. Hit dynamesh. Shift F on our keyboard. In fact, let's undo that real quick because we still have some polygroups to work with. So if I hit solo mode, you can see when you do the extract, it maintains these polygroups. Let's Control Shift left click on the blue side. So the other side is hidden. We're going to delete the hidden and then run a smooth right now. Okay, just run that smooth. And then we're going to do something over here in the edge loop drop down. Click on the group loops button, and it's going to smooth everything out just a little bit for you, including that edge. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to remesh our topology in a way that we can do some polygonal modeling. And right from here, I'm going to come to Z remesh. I'm going to leave that at, let's switch it down to like 2 for now, and then hit Z remesh and see how it does. Okay, let's hit Z remesh one more time. And you see it's given us a clean topology now, and the reason I've done this, now that I'm smoothing this out, is because it's going to be easier to do like an extrude and give this thickness in the end. And it's actually fairly tricky because we still need to include the lenses in there. So we really should have done this before we moved into pose mode. But we'll just make it work. So let's draw a mask where let's undo, clear our mask, and then Control D. So now we have a higher poly count, and then we'll start to mask out our lens area. Let's do that. Nice thing about Zbrush is like there's multiple ways to go about pretty much every problem. There's not just like one way. I'll teach you a pro tip here with this right here. So go like this, and then I don't want to have to go back and fill that in. You can come over here to masking and then do auto region, and it'll fill in what it thinks is the interior of that mask for you automatically. It's really handy if you're doing like scales or like a lot of crazy masking. Okay, so we've got the lenses now. With those masks, I'm going to hit Control W, and it's going to convert those into its own poly group. And then from there, I'm going to go to into geometry, and the edge loop drop down. I'm going to hit group loops now. And I don't know why, but these things just are not polishing the way I'd like. Let's turn up the polish and turn, yeah, okay, it's looking a little bit better. So now I'm going to control shift left click on the lenses and hit control W to make those one poly group. I'm going to invert my selection by control shift left clicking and dragging outside of my geometry, hitting control W. And now I have two poly groups, one for the lenses and one for the wraparound. Okay. I'm going to clean these lines up a little bit. Sometimes they get a little bit wobbly with the masking. And a lot of that depends on, you know, what's the resolution of your geo when you've started to draw your mask out. And you can simplify this if you just take a little bit more time. Okay, what I'm going to do now is control shift left click and make just the lenses visible. And then what I like to do is I like to drop my working subtools down to the stack. So I want the ones I'm currently working on at the bottom of the stack. And the way to do that is you can hold shift and then left click this arrow. It'll drop the lenses all the way down, okay? And we're going to come over here to split and then do split hidden. And what that did was it added our frame into a separate subtool and our lenses into their own subtool, okay? So now we get to work on these and kind of isolate these individually, which is super convenient. So I'm still going to clean them up just a little bit though, and then come back here to geometry and run a Z-remesh and see what that does for me. Okay, so these are looking good. Let's give the lenses some thickness now because we can't print a single-sided plane. So going to our Z modeler brush, I'm going to mouse over that face, make sure that extrude is the operation, and it's going to do that to all of the poly groups. And now it's going to give that guy thickness. And so another cool thing too is if you'd like to add some creasing easily, you can just grab that purple poly group and do the same there. And then if I hit Control D to subdivide, it does a pretty good job of just maintaining that. So the lenses we'll call good for now, and now we need to add some thickness to our frames and Z-remesh those first. Let's run a Z-remesh, and 2 is good for now. Let's see what it does. Okay, let's hit Z-remesh one more time. Sometimes you just gotta make it do it a few times to get what you like out of it. And these lenses, you know, these are a little bit too curved on the edges, so we're gonna try and pull out these edges a little bit and just match the proper shape that we want. I started listening to binaural beats. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. It helps you to focus. It helps you to really kind of laser focus on the task at hand. And there's a lot of ADD out there. A lot of people struggling to focus on tasks with all the distractions we have and the news and politics and all that rubbish. So I've been trying to listen to these binaural beats while I work, and I find that they help me to kind of laser focus. Also to stay awake. So when I rotate around this thing, it disappears, and that's because it's got single-sided normals on. So if we come down here to display properties, we can click the double button and then it'll show up for you. I wish that was on by default. Max on, just a little hint, because chances are you're going to want to see the back sides of your faces by default. Just throwing that out there. So okay, let's do the same to the other side. It's probably bent in a little bit too much. And then bring this guy down just a little. And then let's do our extrude and give this guy some thickness. So mouse over the face with the Z modeler brush on. Make sure extrude and polygroup all are the functions. And then we'll pull that guy out. Pull these guys out. And then with the mouse over the edge, make sure insert single edge loop is on. Then we'll kind of add some creasing to that too, so that it will subdivide appropriately. Hit Control D to do a test. And cool. So now let's make our let's turn off everything by holding Shift and then left clicking on the eye, and then just turn on our working groups and turn off solo so we can see how things are lining up. So the lenses are too curved to match the shape of his forehead because that's where we extract it. So let's pull the lenses out and sort of flatten those out a little bit. Okay. It's not perfect, but it's going to take some finagling just to kind of get it in a good spot. But it's getting better. Smoothing, rounding out those edges just a little bit. Left clicking back to my lenses and getting those into place. Just remember, some of these ridges won't print up when you print real small, so you might want to accentuate the ridges a little bit more just to make sure that they pop. Okay, so let's hit Control W on this guy. So it's now one poly group. Let's go back to our lenses and turn on solo. Hit Control W, make sure those are one poly group. And then I'm going to merge these two things together, and you're thinking, is that destructive? That might break things, that might break the world. Well, it's fine because we have separate poly groups, and we can always come over here to split and then do a group split, and it'll split those back into separate poly groups. But the reason I wanted to do this is so that I can modify these sunglasses as one shape. It's just a little bit easier to modify them when they're in one poly group. So that's why I done it. Okay. And yeah, I mean, they're looking okay. They're gonna need some love. So these props are gonna take a good amount of time for us to get through. We still have to do the camera and the shoes, and I'm already at an hour in this particular video. So we did a lot though. We got some of the temp clothing extracted. We got his glasses on. I'm gonna hit save. And then because I've been playing with Transpose Master, it doesn't know where to save the file to, so you're gonna have to come back here and do a save as, and then manually path it back to your character that you're working on. And then I'm gonna version this up to version 3 myself. And now that we've resaved that subtool, it'll now save next, and save will work properly as expected. And I think now that we've hidden his eyes, it's definitely looking more like a Neistat character. For sure, I'm getting a little bit more happy with how things are looking. There's just maybe a little bit too much curve in these lenses. So let's continue to like noodle with that a little bit. So, okay, cool. It's good enough for now. We'll add the little connector parts that go behind the ears in the next video, and then continue to refine the clothing detail, maybe extract his suit coat, and just continue to add the props. So again, call to action. I know it probably drives you guys crazy, but just remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It gets me excited, it keeps me pumped and super jazzed to continue making videos to teach you guys stuff. And again, if you guys have any pro tips that can help simplify the process that I've already showed you, something that maybe I haven't covered or maybe don't know about, just leave a comment in the description, let me know what you think. And we'll keep going on this and beautifying this and making it look more in line with our concept. I think we're getting closer. We still need to push the stylization. His chin is still jutting out quite a bit. I just need to walk away from the screen and then come back and take a look, and I find that's very common with my artwork, because I need to stop looking at it for a period of time and then come back to it, and it'll end up looking better. So anyway, we'll see you in the next one.